ritualistic sacrifices. But you can't tell me that Europeans never...
My goal here is not to vilify the Spaniards, so I know some people are going to get defensive with the information I'm going to present, but I'm just presenting history, all right? The thing is, I just see an inconsistency where people want to assume that the indigenous people were savages and horrible and evil, like the Mexica, because of the human sacrifices, and that the Europeans, by contrast, were these paragons of virtue that were civilized and they were Christian and they were good, right? But the thing is that that's not really true. In the 1300s, 1400s, and 1500s, the Spanish were very oppressive to the Jewish population, and they killed tens of thousands of Jews, and they also forcibly converted hundreds of thousands of Jews. And they did this on the basis of religion, okay? So if you're going to say that the Mexica were savages and horrible and all these indigenous people were inferior, the Spanish were, again, very virtuous, by contrast, it's like you can't ignore this part of history where no, the Spaniards were just as bad. Now, they didn't call it sacrifice, but the end result is the same. It's killing a shit ton of people because of religion. And they did this. Just alone in a massacre in 1391 in the kingdoms of Castile and Aragon and in other places in the Iberian Peninsula, 30,000 to 50,000 Jews were killed. And 200,000 here are estimated to have been forcibly converted under penalty of death if they did not do so. Then later on, closer to the 1490s, Spain and Portugal ended up expelling the Jews. But then again, they also did some other workarounds where they didn't let everybody leave and they just forcibly converted them. They would steal their children from them and forcibly convert them, things like that. And they had laws that discriminated against Jews in general being able to exercise the rights of an average citizen. People also like to say that the Spanish just heavily mixed and that they were more progressive than the English and that they never did genocide. But that isn't true. The Spanish also engaged in genocide. Now, they did do a lot of the mixing and bringing people into the fold. That's true. And that's better, ultimately, than killing a bunch of people. But they did practice genocide. They did that against my own ancestors, the Chichimecas, as well. For 20 years during the war, 1560s to 1580s, the policy was genocide as proposed by the Spanish settlers. It was a war of fire and blood. So I just want to reveal this to counteract these assumptions that the Spanish were morally superior than the indigenous groups. That's not the case. And even then, again, the Aztecs / Mexica was only one group, okay? You cannot attribute their crimes to all the indigenous groups in the Americas and say because the Spanish did this fucked up shit that therefore all of them needed to be punished by the Spanish and you know, whatever, like they needed to take control, like that justifies it. It doesn't justify it. And before people start jumping in the comments saying, oh, you hate yourself, you hate your Iberian roots. I don't hate them. I actually think they're pretty cool. And this is one of my ancestors, Marcos Alonso de la Garza y del Arcon, and he was a crypto Jew. He was a Sephardic Jew, but he was also a conquistador. And I used him to apply for Portuguese citizenship. But again, I'm going to present history with how it is, all right? And that's the thing, is like some people, they like to really worship and fanboy too much for their Iberian side, and they want to deny history and just paint the indigenous as all evil. And it's like, you can't just do that also, just on the basis of the Aztecs, you know? And you can't also pretend like they were just very morally superior to the Aztecs either. I would say they were roughly on par. I mean, look at how many people they killed in Iberia just on the basis of religion as well. You know, they were not any better. I mean, Marcos Alonso right here, one of the Spanish ancestors I am showcasing, literally fled from Iberia to come to the New World to escape the Inquisition, him and his family. Several members of his family were burned alive by the Inquisition in the Canary Islands. And so it was a matter of survival for a lot of the Sephardic Jews that fled and were secretly Jews in northern Mexico.